All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. NFL week number 11. We got the Sunday slate to dive into in today's video, with the exception of the Sunday Night Football game. That will be its own video posted here on the channel, but all of the other games we're going to dive into. I'm going to give you my prediction on the side. I'll give you my prediction on the total. We'll talk about either plays, like player prop spots that we like within the game as well. But keep an eye on GuyBostonSports.com. That is where all of my final plays, so what I'm actually rolling with myself, will be for free, and I'll direct you over there in the pinned comments, so make sure to keep an eye on that. In terms of how we did last week, another profitable week in the NFL. We crushed Sunday and Thursday night. Monday night, we did give back a half unit, but overall, another positive week. We went 1-2 in Thursday Night Football this week, so not off to the hottest of starts, but hopefully we can get a little momentum from last video on Sunday over to this one and have yet another, like I said, profitable week in the NFL. Let's go ahead and dive into this one, guys. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You guys ran up the likes in the comments on the last video, and that means the world to me with the new channel and whatnot, right? So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you're new, and make sure you guys are commenting. I'll say it in a lot of videos. There's so many people that are smarter and sharper than me that are commenting plays down below. Go check those out, show some love, get involved with the community in the comments down below. But let's jump into game number one here. We're looking at the Jets taking on the Colts. In this one, we're taking a peek at a Jets spot at -4. That is where I'm going to lean, and it's not necessarily based on everything that I'd want it to be based on and whatnot, but I don't necessarily think you can have the talent like the Jets have and continue to go lower or like seems like it's rock bottom for me. Now, I will say they do have a banged up team. You have Adams, Reed, Mosley's still banged up, right? Even Rodgers is on the injury report, so we want to make sure that some of these guys, if not all of them, are playing before rolling with something like this. But I'm not impressed with this Indianapolis team, and I don't think 4 points is enough to send their way. So like I said, we're taking a peek there at the Jets. I don't love this spot all that much, but they've been a lot better, and it's crazy to say they're only 2-2 at home, but a lot better at home than on the road this year. They're 1-5 on the road, 2-2 at home, so maybe there's something to be said for that against a team like Indianapolis. That's, like I said, I'm not really buying into much about them, but they're 1-4 on the road this year. So quick one here. I lean towards the Jets minus the 4 points. That total is at 44. I don't think either one of these offenses is all that tremendous, but I do think the Jets can get to potentially like 21 points here. So I think I'm going to take a peek at a Jets team total over. I don't want to trust both teams. I think one of these teams is going to have a good game. One is not. I'm hoping and obviously thinking it's the Jets, but I'm going to lean Jets team total over. And then one player prop. I don't have a line out as of right now for his receptions, but I like it either way, even with his receiving yards. It's going to be Tyler Conklin over 22.5. Devontae Adams is banged up. I don't think he's practiced yet this week. Veteran, I'm not sure how much that's going to mean in terms of him playing, but if he doesn't play, I love Conklin's both yards and receptions, and this is a Colts team that allows plenty of production to the tight end position. This season, DVOA adjusted fantasy points versus position, mouthful, I know, but a 33% production uptick to the opposing tight end. I like Tyler Conklin here. He hasn't done too much in a little while, but this could be a decent spot for him. All right, next up, we're looking at Tennessee taking on the Vikings here. Tennessee has been in a little bit of a weird spot. Like, their only win in the last 3 weeks, or I guess 5 weeks, right, was that overtime win against the Patriots, but they've played Buffalo, Detroit, the Chargers defense in 3 of the last 4 games, right? So I guess it's a little bit tough to say that they've been sliding. Minnesota is in a spot where they got the win last week, did not look all that great. We had Sam Darnold in completions as well as their team total over, only Sam Darnold in completions cashed. In this spot, I don't think 5.5 points is enough to give the Titans. This is a legitimate Minnesota defense. Based on what they've done in the last 3 weeks here, 16.7, not even allowing 17 points per game, holding opponents to barely any passing yards. It's like 170, rushing yards 77. Like, this team will win games via defense. And I think that this is a good Titans defense. But if this is going to be a defensive game, there's a clear separation in terms of who is the better defense, and that's Minnesota to me. And the Titans offense, like, I don't really know what to make of that. I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings here, minus the 5.5 points. That total's at 39.5. I got burned with it last week, but I do think that there's a level of the Vikings being able to put up a number this week. So maybe Vikings team total over 20.5. Like, they've clearly been good to that line plenty this season. I think 7 of their last 10 games. Unfortunately, they scored 12 points last week, so it makes it a little tough. I don't necessarily love it. One thing I will say is I think Calvin Ridley gets involved here. if the Vikings are going to be up big and in controlling this game, Tennessee's going to have to throw the ball. And based on the mix of quarterbacks that they have playing right now, whether it's Rudolph, I don't care if it's Levitt or Rudolph or anything, right? Like Levis is going to try and find the best wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. I would say Rudolph should try and find the best wide receiver, Calvin Ridley. So I think that he could get some uptick of targets. So I'm going to look at him in terms of player props as well. But yeah, give me the Vikings minus the points, team total over. And in fact, I probably would say team total over before the points because that's a lot of points to lay, but it is within 6, so we'll see. Keep an eye on the final plays for that. Give me the Vikings team total over, the Vikings, as well as maybe a potential look at Calvin Ridley here in this spot. Guys, if you have not tried Sleeper yet, this is an amazing time to do so. First off, for Sunday, they will be doing their Sunday squares, meaning they get multiple discounts on the app, right? But you're also going to get a free square if you sign up today. Joe Burrow, 0.5 passing yards. It's an absolute no-brainer. But the biggest thing that they're doing right now, and it's kind of crazy, they're offering up to a $1,500 deposit match. That is the largest they have ever done and the largest I've ever seen out there. So go check out Sleeper. That link will be down below. I'll also put it right with the final plays on the Guy Boston Sports site, but you're going to get multiple Sunday squares, the Sunday sleeper squares that they drop. Again, bunch of discounted plays, right? You'll get this extremely discounted play and $1,500 deposit match. Absolute no-brainer, guys. Go check out Sleeper. Link down below and on the Guy Boston Sports site along with the final plays. All right, this next one I may be a little bit crazy on, but I don't think it warrants the psycho alarm or anything like that. We got Steelers taking on Baltimore. Baltimore 3-point favorites on the road here. Total sitting at 48.5, which is super high for a Steelers game. But when you think about it, Russell Wilson's been cooking. Now, I said I might be crazy for this one, and maybe I'm not. You guys let me know in the comments, but am I crazy to like the Steelers here, either outright or obviously having that field goal in your back pocket? Their offense would have been the concern, you know, if you look back a month and said, hey, they're playing the Ravens, right? Like, that would have been the, what are they going to do? Their offense has been cooking now, albeit it's been against, what was it, the Raiders, the Commanders, Giants, and Jets, right? Like, yeah, maybe that's why, but Russell Wilson's played in 3 of those 4 games. He's looked okay. Like, they got into a game last week in which they kind of had to shoot out against Washington, and they ended up winning that game. So, to me, if you have 2 decent offenses in the last 3 weeks here, just to put it in perspective here, the last 3 weeks, Steelers 3rd in points per game at 30.3, Baltimore 2nd, 33.3. But when you flip to the defensive side of things, we know Baltimore's defense ain't all that great. So now you have 2, and I can't believe I'm saying it, comparable offenses in the way that they're playing. You throw in the fact that one of them has a stellar defense, and specifically a stellar defense against the run. Maybe I start to think, oh, this could be a good upset spot for the Steelers at home. So I get why someone would be on the Ravens because season long right now, they clearly have the most dynamic offense, the better offense, all that. But this team is in a decent spot right now in terms of how the Steelers have been playing, right? So I guess, yeah, give me the Steelers plus the points, that total at 48.5. I do think the defense has to shine here, right? So I'm going to lean towards either an under or maybe even a Baltimore team total under. Like, go do your job, Steelers defense, and we don't need to worry about them scoring points and whatnot. So maybe that's a hybrid way of approaching this game where we're just trusting the most trustworthy side of the ball for the defense, or for the Steelers, right? The defense. So maybe that's how we look. And then in terms of player props, I don't have much that I'm loving in this spot. I'm more or less looking at either Steelers plus the points, or like I said, maybe a sprinkle on the money line, the under, and then also, I think I just burped, battling through, the under or a Baltimore team total under, which all those might sound crazy, or a lot of you guys might be agreeing. I'm not exactly sure because this is a very good Baltimore offense. All right, Saints, Browns. I'd be lying if I looked at you guys and said I had any sort of real interest in this one. I don't think we touch it. I would lean Saints because of that pick'em there. I think that they're a little bit better now with obviously Derek Carr back, but they still have offensive line issues and whatnot. I just think that this Browns team kind of stinks. We've seen the Saints put up 20-plus points in both weeks that Carr's been back, right? And we really haven't seen Cleveland, so didn't play last week, but they had Jameis start and looked really good against Baltimore. He beats them. Then he comes right back down to earth against the Chargers, and I don't necessarily see him like torching this Saints defense. Now, I don't think the Saints defense is all that great, but they're decent against the pass. So if they shut down, and when I say decent against the pass, I mean decent, like not great. You know what I mean? If they can shut down Jameis, then we just have Chubb to worry about behind an offensive line that hasn't been all that. Like, this is just still a Browns team in such disarray that I'll go with the Saints as well as the under. I wouldn't even be surprised if I could convince myself of either side being a team total under either. I don't think this is a great game, but you know what? That's just one man's opinion. I'm just calling it like I see it. Maybe some people down there have some good little sharp spots in this one. Not this guy. All right, Lions taking on the Jaguars. Lions 13.5-point favorites. That totals at 46.5. I want to start with a player prop spot here because I do think that line is tough to look at. 13.5. Like, that's a big number to lay as obviously the Lions, but it's not big enough, I feel like, for the Jaguars, who are probably going to even be without Trevor Lawrence. And then the total, kind of weird because then you have a one-sided affair in essence, right? That Jaguars offense hasn't looked all that great. The Lions have looked really good, so I'm kind of not exactly sold on either side of this game. But what I will say, I like Jared Goff's spot here. Now, I think a lot of people, and his line for completions is at 20.5 right now. He hasn't hit it in 3 straight games, so I can understand why someone might not like this. But this is very much why we looked at Sam Darnold a week ago with his completions. This, even as bad as the Jaguars get, this is a decent Jaguars run defense. I'm not going to say good, great, anything like that, but a decent one. Now, they haven't been as good as of late, but still, teams game planning for them know that the run game is going to be tough to come by. Now, can you make an argument that the Lions have such a dynamic running back duo that it's not going to matter? Sure, I'm not going to take that away, but I will say Jared Goff to go up there and complete 21 balls, like he could have these dump-off screen passes and whatnot, even if they're up by 1,000,000 because they still want to chew clock and he's going to get some easy completions. Much, again, like Sam Darnold did last week. So Jared Goff over 20.5 completions is probably my main look in this one. I would go and look at the Lions with the points there, minus the points, just because they're so much better in that total. Maybe a Lions team total over or a Jacksonville team total under. But I do think the Lions have potential to score a lot of points and Jacksonville not. So picking an over-under on the actual game itself is kind of tough when I think both teams could be moving in opposite directions. So that's probably how we played it. But like I said, I'm pretty sold on Jared Goff potentially being a decent look here for his completions. Hey, real quick, guys, if you've made it this far in the video, go ahead and comment 12. Really do appreciate all of the support here on the new channel, like I already mentioned. So let me know that you made it this far in the video by commenting 12. Truly, true appreciate it. Make sure you're subscribed as well. You might be watching this, subscribe to the old channel, thinking it's the same thing. No, this is a new channel, more Guy Boston Sports. Make sure you're subscribed and hit that like button as well. Let's get back to the rest of these games. All right, little rivalry action here. We got the Bears taking on the Packers. I don't know if we can justifiably call this a rivalry based on how the two teams are looking right now, but you have the 6-3 Packers heading to Chicago here, taking on the 4-5 Bears. Bears getting 5.5 points, which I don't think is enough, so spoiler alert, I'm looking at yet another favorite here, Packers minus the points. That total at 40.5, I don't necessarily think that this is a low-scoring game by any means. Like, even if Chicago snaps into playing some good offense like they had just a few weeks back, I don't think that this is the best of Green Bay defenses, and they're good against the pass. What if the run game starts to get going somehow? That would do so much for this Bears team, so I will lean over. Do I love it? Not so much. I do have a player prop that I love in this one, though, Josh Jacobs to record a touchdown. So far on the season, the Bears have allowed the second fewest touchdowns to opposing players. You filter it to running backs, they've allowed the 16th most, so right in the middle of the pack there, but that's a huge jump from the second fewest to 16th in terms of middle of the pack of the NFL. I do like this spot, especially if Green Bay does kind of get up in a decent lead and whatnot, and then starts to have to run the ball. Like, they'll give the ball and the rock to, I would assume, Josh Jacobs there on the goal line there. And overall, like, obviously he's going to get the goal line carries. This is a pretty damn efficient red zone team in the Bears, so I don't think that they're going to be slinging around with Love and whatnot. Like, they'll probably keep it on the ground in the red zone, which I like even more. I mean, that might not make the most sense to you in the sense with, the idea of, well, they're really good, efficient defense in the red zone. Correct. But that makes me think that the Packers will be more safe, meaning we might even see more red zone carries for Josh Jacobs. Hopefully that makes sense. In terms of how we've seen them in the last couple games, in terms of teams that they've played, right? Ramondre Stevenson looked pretty good. He didn't score a touchdown, I will say that, but he did rush for 20 attempts, 74 yards. Gibson had 26. Even Drake May ran for 24 yards. In terms of how Arizona did, we did see a running back touchdown. I want to say it was, who did score a touchdown? They had a couple rushing touchdowns against them. James Conner went off. off. So the dam's about to break for the Chicago team, and I think Josh Jacobs is probably the perfect guy to make that happen in all honesty. So that's probably a look for me in this one. All right, next up, we have Miami taking on the Raiders. I like the over in this one to begin with. I've already seen some 43.5s out there, so I think that that's going to be my main look. We've seen the Raiders at least score 20-plus points in 2 of their last 2 games. And Miami, hopefully their offense is kicking back into gear. They've gone 27, 27, and 23 with Tua, right? So I do think that there's an opportunity here for an over because neither one of these defenses is anything that makes me shake in my boots. But what I will say, and I'll sound the psycho alert alarm, I think outside of 7 points here, a touchdown and an extra point, maybe a little bit too much. Like, let's not act like, and I give the Dolphins credit for beating the Rams. I was on the Rams, so obviously that stinks. But let's not act like the Rams played a really good game and the Dolphins beat a Rams team that was on a streak, right? The Rams were messy. The Dolphins played a messy game, multiple turnovers, fumbles, all that. That's the type of game where I feel like the Raiders can keep this one close. Other than that Cincinnati game, they got blown out. They covered against the Chargers. They covered against the Chiefs. Like, there could be a spot for the Raiders here, plus 7.5. Now, if you look at it and you're like, well, what about their team, right? Yeah, if you start talking about their personnel and whatnot, that's where you might lose me. Like, I don't like Minshew all that much. Their wide receivers, hopefully Myers gets going, but Alexander Madison, White, like, yes, they do not have the talent that the Dolphins have, but the Dolphins looked a little messy and they don't have the best of defenses. So that's kind of where I'm stopping and hanging my hat. Raiders plus the points and the over. From a player prop perspective, there's nothing really jumping out, but obviously keep an eye on the final plays over on the website, guys. If I add anything, I'll give a little bit of a blurb there if I add something that obviously I don't talk about in this video. All right, Patriots taking on the Rams. I do think that this is a weird number, so if I were to roll this, I'd somehow try and same game parlay it, maybe massage the number a little bit, because I like the Rams to bounce back and get a win after what we just talked about, that sort of slimy, messy game against the Dolphins in primetime, right? But the Patriots are kind of due for a letdown. They've now won 2 of their last 3 games. I don't think people realize how bad the Jets are when they beat them, how bad Tennessee has been, how bad Chicago is, and Drake May is legit, and I do think that, he can keep a team close, but I'd still take Matt Stafford at this point, right? Just in a game like, gun to head. So I like the Rams. I think that, from a defensive perspective, again, people don't really realize how bad or how I should say discombobulated these offenses that they've played in terms of Jets, Titans, and Bears are. Like, this Rams team was looking great offensively, and then they just hit a hiccup, like a bump in the road last week. So I expect them to come into New England when New England's due for a letdown. Rams are in a bounce back spot and kind of light it up. So I'm going to look towards the Rams in this spot. Would also consider a Rams team total. Like I said, we'd have to massage some numbers for me to feel good. 4.5 is a weird football number. You know what I mean? Like, you might as well take 6 or 6.5 at that point because you're outside of field goal, inside touchdown. So that might be how we do it if we want to get risky, but overall maybe just a Rams team total over is the move here because I'm not totally buying into what this Patriot, and I'm a Patriots fan, so I'm ragging on my own team here. I'm not totally buying into how good or promising or hopeful they've looked in the last couple weeks. So I think the main thing here, like I mentioned, Rams team total over. It's a way to kind of marry both the side and the total in this one. So that's probably what I'll look at. Moving on to Denver taking on Atlanta. This is an interesting one to me. Atlanta has a ton of injuries, but a lot of the main ones, they do look like they're going to play, but that injury report is definitely very, very long. I think that Atlanta could or maybe should be favored in this one. This seems like an overreaction to a couple things, and I've actually seen some 2.5s out there. If it's 2.5, I don't mind Atlanta moneyline or +3, buying a half point. But what I'll say about this is I do think there's a little bit of an overreaction, not the most. Like, I think that this could just be a flip spread. I'm not saying Atlanta should be like -5 or anything like that, right? But I do think that there's a little bit of an overreaction due to Denver keeping it close with Kansas City. That was a really good game. That was one of the plays last week that we came so close to pulling the trigger on. We didn't get there. And then Atlanta losing to New Orleans. So I feel like, again, an overreaction in a sense is a great time to buy low. And I could see this Falcons team kind of snapping right back to it now. Like I said, injuries. Kirk Cousins banged up, but he's been practicing. That's obviously massive. But give me the Falcons in this spot. Maybe even another peek at their team total. We got giddy with team totals last week, but hey, we had a positive week, right? You can't get too mad about it. I don't necessarily like the idea of a full game over or a full game under, because much like when we talked about the Lions and Jags, I think these two teams could be moving in opposite direction in this game, meaning Denver not going to score a lot of points, but they'll try like heck to play some defense, right? Atlanta, the defense is meh. I think they're going to score a decent amount of points, but I don't necessarily think they're going to score a lot to carry most of the weight. So that's kind of where I come out there. In terms of a player prop, though, if I think Atlanta is the better team and they get the lead, I like Courtland Sutton over 4.5 receptions. I like Courtland Sutton over 56.5 receiving yards. He's done it in 3 straight weeks here. 56.5 being the line. I like the spot for him. He should get a decent amount of targets. Last 3 weeks, he's gotten 11, 10, and 9 targets. Could you say it's the defense that they've been playing? I guess, but Kansas City, he racked up 6 receptions. Baltimore's bad defense, okay, that's when he had 10 targets, 7 catches. Carolina, that's when he had 11 targets, 8 catches. Like, those 2 ones I get. But Kansas City, 9 targets, 6 receptions? I don't mind this spot. In Atlanta this season, allowing the 4th most receptions to the wide receiver position. So maybe we'd split a unit on his yards and receptions, because I'm not sure which one I like more, but that's kind of where my head is at as of right now. And again, it's kind of fits into the game script. If Denver comes in, and obviously that line is correct, Denver comes in and stomps, I don't know if Courtland Sutton is going to be as much involved, because I think they'll rely on the ground game, which Atlanta's run defense isn't all that tremendous, but it's been a little bit better as of late. But either way, I think that Denver will try and keep the ball out of their hands, so they'll try and chew clock. But if Atlanta does get a lead, I think this Courtland Sutton spot is a very good spot to look. All right, San Francisco's taking on Seattle. Sounding the cycle alert alarm here right off the rip, because I am considering Seattle in this spot. I would like it at 7, so maybe either we wait or we get a half point in terms of buying the point, that type of thing, or maybe a full one, get it to 7.5, pay extra juice. This San Francisco team is very, very good, and I admit they're very, very good, especially at home. They're a little bit better, but they're just not blowing teams out. Tampa Bay without Baker, 23-20, they lose against the spread. They were only 5.5 point favorites against Dallas, but we know Dallas isn't all that great. They only beat them by 6, so they did cover, but not this number, 6.5, right? Kansas City beats them outright. They play Seattle, what was it, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago? Seattle keeps this game close in the, I guess you could say later on in the game, right? But overall, like, if you just duplicated the 3rd and 4th quarter, that's a close game. Like, Seattle won the second half in this one, so they lose. They get stomped. It was like 35-21 or something like that, right? But there's got to be fire from Seattle. They were at home there. This was a crappy one. But again, the last 2 quarters of football that these two teams played against one another were super, super close. And if we have that amount of points in our back pocket, I sounded the cycle alert alarm. I get it if you think I'm crazy, but that's the direction I am going to lean in here. And I think that that's going to, result in an over. This Seattle defense isn't something that I love. I don't think that this is a very good San Francisco defense in terms of rushing, and even as of late against the pass, they've been a little bit better, but still on the year, it's just kind of above middle of the pack, but still not tremendous, right? They do have a lot of playmakers, but I still think that this is an over game. If Seattle's in this one at all, it should be an over, and we even saw that again last time they played. At halftime, this was a 16-3 game. You're probably thinking, yikes, that's under, right? Well, there was 41 points scored in the second half total. So it's like, if Seattle is in there and going back and forth, these are two teams that should be able to score on one another. Hopefully Seattle keeps it close enough to let us double dip and get that spread as well. Buffalo taking on Kansas City. This is going to be a phenomenal game, and I'm glad we have it here on today's video. Buffalo right now, 2.5 point favorites. That total is at 46. I think this is going to be a very, very close game that defense eventually decides. And both these teams have good defenses. So first and foremost, I don't mind the idea of an under. I think a lot of people might like the over because they have the firework names, and obviously both teams looking very good. Kansas City 9-0, Buffalo 8-2, Kansas City 4-0 on the road, Buffalo 4-0 at home. Like, this has the making to be a very, very, very good football game. I am going to look at the favorite here. At some point, Kansas City is going to lose a game just based on how they're winning. Some of them, they're squeaking out. They've gotten bailed out by calls. At some point, they lose a game. And this, you can argue, and probably not even an argument, right, is just the toughest spot they've had to go through this entire year. Now, in Buffalo, in a game that matters, whereas you're not catching Buffalo at a good time. Like, Buffalo scored 30-plus points in 4 straight games. The offense is cooking. So I'm going to lean Buffalo here minus the 2 points and the under in this spot. Maybe a Kansas City team total under as well. That way we don't have to, like, only put our eggs in Buffalo's basket. I just want to trust that defense does show up in a sense. And for Buffalo, you're talking about a top 10 defense in terms of DVOA and from a points per game perspective. But same thing on the other side for the Chiefs. So that's why I might just roll with the under overall. But this is going to be such a good game to watch. Having an under is going to be like nails on an absolute chalkboard. There are some injuries to note now. Some guys are limited in practice. Some guys are full participants. Here we have DeAndre Hopkins, full participant. He is on the injury report, though. I don't think Butker's playing. Pacheco actually limited in practice. I don't know if he's going to play or not. Kareem Hunt, full participant. Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen both on the injury report, but both have been playing. You might be getting back Juju Smith-Schuster. Now on the Buffalo side of things, I already talked about Josh Allen, but you do have Amari Cooper. He is a limited participant. Dalton Kincaid is out. Milano still out, which is an absolute huge. The fact that the Bills have been so good even without him is just such a telling thing that this is a very good team. But you have Coleman, you have Hollins, like a lot of guys that catch the ball here look like they're going to be out. I'm not sure Curtis Samuel, but even think about how much time we just spent reading names that actually you recognize. You know what I mean? Like a lot of guys are on the injury report now. That being said, we're in week 11 of the NFL. A lot of these guys, it's just important to monitor their practice status, which I said for a lot of those guys, they were playing at least a limited or full participant. But overall, keep an eye on those injuries. If one of those guys out, obviously the line might move and whatnot, but give me the Bills here minus the points as well as that total going under. In terms of what I'd like now, I want to look at, I guess, potentially Dawson Knox for the Bills. I don't think we're going to get great value just because everybody and their grandmother knows that Dalton Kincaid is out, but I like his over 2.5 receptions without Kincaid in his last, game, I think it was. He had 3 catches on, I believe, 6 targets. 6 targets is a lot. The 3 catches, he only hits us over by a half a catch, right? But 6 targets is a lot, and that came last season. So I do think that this could be a decent spot with Kincaid out for Dawson Knox. Maybe even a little peek at him for plus 306 for a touchdown. Maybe I'm getting a little too carried away on the Knox news. But yeah, I like him multiple ways, whether it's his yards, catches, or touchdowns. I think the safest one might be catches based on if he's going to get enough targets. And I think he had 3 targets last week, right? Had 2 catches. So, yeah, he was right there anyway. So, yeah, give me the Bills, the under, and that player prop. Again, this is going to be such a good game. Keep an eye on the final plays over on GuyBostonSports.com because we might add some plays in this game just because it's going to be such an electric game to watch there. And we'll give a little blurb if we didn't talk about it over there. But, guys, that is going to wrap it for week 11. Appreciate you guys. Go ahead and hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.